death blow to living things, pets. It also produces seeds designed to resist those lethal chemicals. And now that company is under fire for these seeds, which have been genetically modified, and for their legislative muscle. In the past few days, Monsanto and biotech firms have defeated efforts to allow labeling for genetically modified products and to strip away special protections for that industry. And over the weekend, millions marched against Monsanto. 2 million people in 436 cities in 52 countries. Their protest 100% focused on genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. Those are plants, bacteria, and animals whose genetic makeup has been scientifically altered. That's how organizers labeled the March Against Monsanto protest that took place this weekend. Some opponents of these GMOs want them banned. Others say foods whose DNA has been changed need at least to be labeled. Monsanto is a leading producer of genetically modified seeds and herbicides. In the last quarter alone, Monsanto sold seed, much of it modified, worth more than $4 billion. It's a business, the company says, that is helping to feed the planet.
It's a vision that strives to meet the needs of a rapidly growing population.
But the protesters want to know just how their food is being re-engineered. Some of the outrage was sparked by these shocking photos showing massive tumors that developed on these rats after they ate genetically modified corn over their lifetimes. But that study by researchers at the University of Caen in France has been criticized by many in the scientific community and by the European Food Safety Authority, who say it is simply not up to scientific standards. Even so, the disturbing tumor photos did lead many to question their own standards about what exactly we're all eating. One question, how can you know if you're eating genetically modified foods and feeding them to your family? Well, you can't, and that's the issue.
I've received over 2,200 letters on this topic.
Last week, senators debated whether states could require food labeling for products with genetically engineered ingredients.
The concept that we are talking about today is a fairly common sense and non-radical idea.
The legislation introduced by independent Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders failed.
When you take on very powerful biotech companies like Monsanto and large food corporations, who in many ways would prefer that people not know what is in the food that they produce, they're very powerful.
This comes on the heels of what critics call the Monsanto Protection Act. That's legislation passed by Congress and signed by the President earlier this year, a bill that allows genetically modified crops approved by the Agriculture Department to be grown even if there is action in the courts declaring them to be dangerous.
You have deregulated the GMO industry from court oversight, which is really not what America is about. You should not be putting riders that people aren't familiar with in a major piece of legislation.
On its website, Monsanto states, quote, plant biotechnology has been in use for over 15 years without documented evidence of adverse effects on human or animal health or the environment. Legislators who sided with Monsanto say the company is improving on nature.
I think it would be more accurately called a modern science to feed a very troubled and hungry world.
But law or no law, grocery giant Whole Foods says they will start labeling all genetically modified food by 2018. And here's the big question for you and for me. Is this stuff safe to eat? New York Times investigative reporter Michael Moss, who wrote the book Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us, joins me now to talk about it. So, Michael, right off the bat, should we be eating this stuff? Is it okay?
You know, Jake, I was really stunned by the number of people who took to the streets marching, but there's a lot of people who are scared. And also, look, I mean, Europeans have been saying no to GMO for years and years, and I wish I could sit here now and say to you they're right or they're wrong, but the fact is there are no studies as yet linking GMO to health problems. The flip side of that is that nobody's really looking hard at that and doing that kind of research. And the agency in charge of GMOs is another three-letter acronym, the FDA, which has a real spotty record on food safety, which concerns people.
Do you eat foods that have been genetically enhanced? Are you concerned about it?
I mean, as of now, it's really hard to know what does have ingredients with genetically modified organisms in it. Look, corn, soya, canola are some of the three biggest ones, but those are additives in so many processed foods in the markets. And I think to some extent this issue is evolving into a matter of disclosure. People care about what they're putting in their bodies, and they want to know what's in the products that they are eating so they can make that decision, even if it's on a gut level, even if it's them saying, look, I know the science isn't there, but I am concerned and I want to hold off until there is solid science saying yes or no.
And that's the final question really here. If there's nothing wrong with it as the biotech industry states, why are they trying to block states from being able to label it? If there's nothing wrong with their product, why push legislation preventing action if a court hypothetically were finding something wrong with it?
Thank you.
Well, because it does mean money, it does mean profits. But look, I think they're also concerned about increasingly, especially the food manufacturers, are increasingly concerned about public attitude. And I think they're the ones who are going to make some move here. You know, they have on their staff these genius scientists who formulate their foods, and they can figure out how to remove GMO ingredients without sacrificing convenience, cost, and taste. And if they can do that, the food manufacturers will move that direction.
Michael Moss, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up in our buried lead, asking